Have you ever noticed how some women can say just a few words to a man, and suddenly he listens more carefully, respects her more deeply, and even feels drawn to her without fully understanding why? It's not magic. It's not manipulation. It's the psychology of communication, respect, and energy. And in this video, inspired by the insights of Carl Gustav Jung, we'll explore how high-value women speak to men in ways that reveal strength, depth, and authenticity. Because here's the truth. It's not just what you say that matters. It's how you say it and the energy behind your words. By the end of this video, you'll understand these subtle but powerful shifts in language and presence that separate a woman who feels undervalued from one who is magnetic, respected, and unforgettable. So let's dive in. Main idea 1. High-value communication is rooted in self-respect. The very first thing to understand is this. A high-value woman doesn't speak to men from a place of needing approval. Her words don't beg, chase, or clink. Instead, they reflect a solid foundation of self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic because it signals to others, consciously or unconsciously, that you value yourself, and therefore they should too. Think of it this way. If you constantly apologize, downplay your needs, or sugarcoat your boundaries, what message does that send? It tells the other person that your needs are less important than theirs. But when you calmly and clearly express yourself, without anger, but with firmness, you signal maturity, balance, and inner strength. And men, consciously or subconsciously, take notice. Everyday example. Instead of saying, "It's okay, I don't mind, whatever you want," a high-value woman might say, "I appreciate your suggestion, but here's what works best for me." Do you see the difference? One is passive, the other is grounded. The second voice communicates respect for herself and invites respect from others. Main idea 2. The power of tone and presence. Words are only part of communication. Jung often spoke about the unconscious signals we send, and this applies perfectly here. The way you deliver your words, your tone, your pauses, your eye contact, often says more than the words themselves. High-value women understand this. They don't need to raise their voices, lecture, or demand attention. Their presence itself carries weight. When speaking to a man, they use a tone that is calm but firm, warm but not overly eager, direct but not aggressive. This balance creates an atmosphere of mutual respect rather than emotional chaos. Example from daily life. Imagine a woman in a relationship saying to her partner, "You never listen to me." This creates defensiveness. But instead, she says, "I don't feel heard when this happens. I'd like us to talk about it." The second approach uses presence and clarity. It doesn't attack the man's identity. It communicates the feeling and the request. That's the language of a high-value woman. Main idea 3. Speaking from authenticity, not strategy. A mistake many people make, men and women alike, is to treat communication as a game strategy. Like, if I say this, I'll get that. But high-value women know that true power lies in authenticity. Carl Jung believed deeply in the importance of the authentic self, what he called individuation. And in relationships, this means speaking truthfully, without wearing masks or playing roles. For example, instead of pretending to like something just to impress a man, she'll say, "That's interesting, but I see it differently." Instead of staying silent when she disagrees, she'll calmly express her view. This doesn't mean being confrontational, it means being real. And authenticity is incredibly attractive because it shows confidence and depth. Analytical comparison. Think about this in cultural terms. Across history, the feminine voice has often been silenced, minimized, or expected to please. But psychology, and even Jung's analysis of archetypes, teaches us that real feminine power emerges when a woman owns her voice. It's not about domination or submission, it's about balance, speaking with honesty, clarity, and respect. In fact, research in modern psychology also supports this. Studies show that people who communicate assertively, not aggressively, not passively, are perceived as more trustworthy, confident, and attractive. So when a woman speaks authentically and respectfully, she's not just engaging in conversation, she's shaping how others perceive her value.
Main idea 4, boundaries, spoken with grace. One of the clearest differences between women who are respected and those who feel overlooked lies in boundaries. High-value women don't use silence to punish or endless explanations to justify. They communicate their boundaries with clarity, and they do it with grace. For example, instead of saying, "I don't want to hang out with you, okay? Leave me alone," she might say, "I appreciate your invitation, but I need some personal time tonight." Notice the difference. One rejects with harshness, the other protects space with respect. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They're doors that you choose to open or close with wisdom. This ties directly into Jung's insight that the self is not complete without balance. Speaking boundaries shows self-awareness, and self-awareness is one of the deepest signs of maturity. Main idea 5, using curiosity instead of judgment. Another powerful way high-value women speak to men is through curiosity instead of judgment. When faced with something confusing or disappointing, many people jump into blame. Like, "Why would you do that? That's stupid." But a high-value woman might respond with curiosity. "I'm trying to understand what you meant by that. Can you explain?" Do you feel the shift? Instead of triggering defensiveness, this invites connection. Men, like anyone, open up more when they feel safe, not attacked. Curiosity builds bridges. Judgment burns them. This is not just relationship advice. It's psychology. Jung emphasized that projection often distorts our view of others. By staying curious, instead of assuming, we reduce projection and see the other person more clearly. Main idea 6, the language of encouragement. High-value women also understand the power of encouragement. Now, encouragement doesn't mean false flattery or empty compliments. It means recognizing effort, growth, or qualities in a man that are authentic and real. For example, instead of saying, "You're the smartest guy ever," which sounds exaggerated, she might say, "I really admire the effort you put into solving that problem." Encouragement communicates respect, and it nurtures a man's deeper self-esteem. It's not about inflating his ego. It's about honoring what's genuine. Culturally, this also aligns with the archetype of the nurturer in Jung's psychology, the figure who brings out the best in others not by controlling them, but by affirming their potential. And here's the key. When a high-value woman encourages authentically, she raises the entire level of the relationship. She doesn't just receive value, she creates it. Main idea 7, silence as communication. This may sound strange, but sometimes the most powerful thing a high-value woman can say is simply nothing. Silence, when used intentionally, communicates strength. It shows that she's not desperate to fill the air with words. It demonstrates patience, self-control, and emotional stability. And it often invites the man to step forward, reveal himself, or take responsibility. For example, in daily life, if a man says something dismissive or sarcastic, instead of reacting emotionally, a high-value woman might simply pause. give a calm look, and remain silent. That silence speaks louder than any heated comeback. From a psychological perspective, silence is powerful because it creates space. And in that space, truth often emerges. Jung would have called this the wisdom of the unconscious at work. What's unspoken still has energy. Main idea 8. Balancing warmth and strength. Here's the heart of it. High-value women communicate with a unique balance of warmth and strength. Too much warmth without strength can look like people-pleasing. Too much strength without warmth can come across as cold or harsh. But when both are present, the effect is magnetic. For example, imagine a woman in a disagreement. She says, calmly and kindly, "I care about you, but I don't agree with that choice. Here's why." She's warm because she cares, but strong because she's honest. This reflects Jung's concept of the union of opposites, the integration of qualities that, when harmonized, create wholeness. A high-value woman doesn't deny her softness, nor her strength. She brings them together in her voice, and that is what makes her unforgettable. Analytical comparison. Think about how this plays out in relationships versus society. In many cultures, women have been taught to either shrink their voices or swing to the opposite extreme of force. But psychology teaches us the real power is in integration, not suppression, not domination. A woman who can speak with both warmth and strength shows that she's in touch with her deeper self. And men, consciously or unconsciously, respond to that integration because it reflects wholeness, a quality we are all seeking in relationships.
Main idea 9. Speaking from inner calm, not outer chaos. High-value women understand that the tone of their voice often matters more than the words themselves. When emotions are running high, it's tempting to snap, shout, or over-explain. But a woman of self-mastery knows how to center herself before responding. For example, instead of, "You never listen to me," she might say, in a calm voice, "I feel unheard when I share my thoughts. Can we talk about that?" Notice the shift. One accuses, the other communicates. Carl Jung believed that our shadow, the emotional chaos we don't control, often spills into relationships. By speaking from inner calm, women demonstrate they've integrated this shadow, which makes their presence even more powerful. Main idea number 10. Using fewer but stronger words. There's an old saying, "A queen doesn't explain, she simply decides." High-value women don't overtalk to prove themselves. They don't flood conversations with endless details to gain approval. Instead, they use fewer words, but they choose them wisely. For example, instead of, "I was just wondering if maybe you could help me with this if it's not too much trouble," she might say, "I'd appreciate your help with this." Short, clear, confident. And here's the irony. Fewer words often create more impact. Why? Because silence between strong words creates weight. It shows that she trusts her voice and doesn't need to decorate it with uncertainty. Main idea number 11. Asking, not demanding. Another way high-value women speak is by asking for what they need instead of demanding. Demands come from fear and control. Requests come from respect and trust. For example, a demand sounds like, "You better call me tonight." A request sounds like, "I'd like to hear from you tonight. Can you call me?" Both communicate the desire, but the request leaves space for the man to choose, which is where real respect and attraction live. Jung taught that love cannot exist where one person dominates the will of another. It can only thrive where freedom exists. Speaking through requests honors that freedom. Main idea number 12. Aligning words with authenticity.
Finally, the most magnetic quality of all, authenticity. High-value women don't pretend to be sweet when they're upset. They don't say yes when their soul means no. They don't mask their truth with polite lies. Instead, they align their words with their real feelings. Authenticity is rare, and that's why it's powerful. Men, like everyone else, may not always know what they want, but they can feel when a woman's words are real. Authentic speech cuts through the noise. It awakens respect. It builds trust. In Jung's language, this is the movement toward individuation, the process of becoming whole, honest, and real. And in the way a woman speaks, this individuation becomes visible. Everyday life example. Let's bring this down to daily reality. Imagine a man invites a woman to dinner, but she doesn't feel ready. A woman who fears rejection might say yes against her will. A woman who fears judgment might invent an excuse. But a high-value woman would simply say, "Thank you for inviting me. I'm not available tonight, but I appreciate it." Simple, honest, respectful, and authentic. This is the kind of communication that not only earns respect, but also filters out people who don't value truth. Analytical reflection. Culturally, many of us have been trained to think high value means external things, beauty, status, or success. But Jung would remind us that the real treasure is found in the psyche, in the way we carry and express our inner world. The way a woman speaks is not just communication, it's the revelation of her inner order, her boundaries, her integration of shadow and light. And when that comes through her words, it is magnetic, unforgettable, and deeply attractive. After tea conclusion. So here's the truth. High-value women don't use tricks, games, or manipulation when speaking to men. They use clarity, curiosity, encouragement, silence, balance, calmness, and authenticity. And here's my personal thought. I believe the most powerful way to speak is not to try to sound high value, but to actually become it inside yourself. When you truly value yourself, your words will naturally reflect it. After tea question for the viewer. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these communication habits do you think is the hardest to practice, and why? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to read them. After tea, call to action. If you found this video insightful, please give it a like, share it with someone who would benefit, and subscribe for more deep psychological lessons inspired by Carl Jung. Remember, your words don't just communicate, they reveal your soul. Use them wisely.